it's Lord Valo here. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to make an elegant card with a couple of hidden messages, which you can easily adapt for any festive occasion, like a birthday or wedding, or whatever you can think of. I started by heat embossing 2 of the phrases from the Champagne Sentiment set on some white cardstock. I masked part of the first one with a strip of washi tape before applying Versamark ink. Then I brushed some starch over the cardstock. This is definitely the key to good embossing. After stamping, I applied platinum embossing powder and inspected the result. I used a needle to get rid of a couple of particles of powder before I hit it with my heat gun. Off camera, I backed the cardstock with some score tape before die cutting the sentiment strips with the Slimline Skinny Strips Dynamics. The regular set works just as well, or you can use a craft knife and a ruler. The cardstock strips are really fragile, so I like to back them with acetate. I grabbed a piece of thin printer paper, folded in half, and inserted a strip of acetate in the middle. That way it's a lot easier to die cut. And as you can see, they turned out perfect. After adhering the 2 types of strips together off camera, I decided to stamp a little arrow from the interactive label set on each one. But first I adhered a couple of champagne corks die cut out of craft cardstock with a cute little die from the Pop the Champagne Dynamics about 1/8 of an inch above the sentiments. It's a good idea to rub them with a bone folder so that they don't catch on the slits that we will cut in our panel later. Next I used the gray Copic marker to add some shading. I also decided to add more dimension to the corks with an extra layer of just the top part. And now we can trim the upper parts of the sentiment strips with a pair of scissors. I really should have zoomed out for this next part, but I think you can still see what I'm doing. To figure out exactly where to trim the lower edges of the strips, I used the champagne bottle as a guide. I cut them 5/8 of an inch from the end of the embossed sentiment. Next I cut a couple of 1/2 an inch long strips of the leftover pieces and adhered them to the ends of the longer strips, forming a T-shape. They act as stops so that the strips won't slide too far. But I'm pretty sure an enamel dot with strong adhesive would work as well, and it would allow you to easily create a couple of channels of foam tape on the back of the panel to make the messages slide perfectly straight. The hardest part of this simple card was to figure out exactly where to place the champagne bottles and main sentiment banner. Once I did that, I temporarily adhered the bottles to the panel with some tape and drew pencil marks for the slits. I then used a sharp craft knife to cut them and made them just a smidge wider than the sentiment strips and about 1/16 of an inch tall. I'm not sure if I'm using the right adjective here, but the strips have some thickness to them, so make sure that they can slide nicely through the slit. I didn't know if I should include the coloring since it was a bit of a disaster. Most of my markers were really dry and I had a hard time blending them. I ended up having to add the finishing touches with Prismacolor pencils, but maybe you'll get the idea. I started by covering the whole thing with the lightest color G12, and then I used the darkest tone, which is W7, on the edges and blended inwards with G99, G94, G16 and G14. I usually don't add highlights with a white gel pen simply because I'm terrible at it and I'm always scared of ruining my coloring. Okay, so I finished decorating the bottles off camera by adding all of the cute labels included in the Pop the Champagne Dynamic set. And then I used liquid glue to attach them to the panel. Here I'm peeling off the backing of the foam tape to adhere the panel to the card base. By the way, I think I forgot to mention that I used the colorful confetti background stamp to decorate it with gold heat embossing. To create the main sentiment, I used the It's a Banner Day Dynamics and Banner Day Celebration stamp set, as well as Caribbean Sea and Tropical Teal cardstock. I also added a little strip with the word pull from the interactive label set, just in case the arrows weren't clear enough. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. As always, you'll find all of the details and measurements in the description box below or on my blog. Have a great day. Bye bye. Hasta la próxima.